following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Well, holy hallelujah and happy Monday, Downers. Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. You know what it is. You know the name. You know the place. It is, of course, The System is Down. My name is Dan Smuts, and I will be your host into this deep dive into uncomfortable, uncharted territories. If you're new here, this is the place where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics, things that are typically out of bounds, or, you know, the things that your family prays you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table, things like conspiracies, politics, and religion. I also like to talk about culture. I find it to be, it's going into some dark areas as of late. So I wanted to have a guy on today to dig into that. But again, if you're new here, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you. Go find the person who invited you. And as always, give them a big #MeToo. Kiss on the lips and slap on the rear from you and from me, because you're going to enjoy this. I guarantee it, and I know that you will, because today's conversation is with Chris Spangle of We Are Libertarians. We Are Libertarians is a podcast that seems to have similar views to this one. Chris and I seem to have a lot of things in common in the way that we deal with things. Chris is all about exploring different areas of thought. His podcast is obviously much more politically driven, but he is interested in exploring different ideas and culture and having an open mind as he does so. So we're going to get into that interview here in just a moment. But before we do, I got to remind you guys about the Downers Club, which is our patron program. It is what keeps the show growing and getting bigger and more beautiful every single week for your viewing and listening pleasure. You can join it by going to patreon.com/The System is Down, and you will get a bunch of weekly bonus audio and video content, bonus episodes of this show every single week. We do all sorts of crazy things over there. I'll talk about that more after, and I'll tell you about the bonus episode that I did with Chris Spangle as well. You can find out about that after the show, but let's get into what you're here for. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Here's my conversation with the great Chris Spangle of We Are Libertarians. Let's get weird. My guest today is the host of the podcast We Are Libertarians, the one and only Chris freaking Spangle. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Chris, you and I are friends of friends and Facebook acquaintances. We run in some of the same circles, but we've never actually spoken in quote-unquote person. This is what people do these days, but it's nice to finally meet you face-to-face-ish.
It's good to talk to a fellow libertarian. I assume you are a libertarian, or should I call what, maybe you're a statist. I don't know what Roger Paxton might call you. Roger
Paxton's been on the show. He did not shout at me and call me a statist as he has for you, but yes. I hope to someday have that honor, but it's nice to meet a fellow gingertarian. Yes, I am a libertarian, but why don't we start out by, we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about some of the culture war stuff and some of the crazy shit that's going on in the world. But I want to get a little bit of background on you first so people can familiarize themselves with you. I like to get people's backstory, even if it doesn't play into the topic that we're talking about. So tell me a little bit about you, your podcast, and your upbringing, and that type of thing.
Yeah, so I live here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I started out as a conservative Republican. My family was all Republican. My grandma was, she has pictures of Reagan and W everywhere, and I listened to Rush every day, and I went to college, and I started volunteering for a local congressional race for a guy named Andy Horning. And I started spouting off all my Rush Limbaugh-isms.
Right.
And I realized he was picking it all apart. He was questioning me. He was asking me, why do you think this happened? And I started to get a little shaky on what I believed, because I'd only ever really had one side of things. And then I went to work at a local radio station in 2004. I got an internship there, and I started working with a guy named Abdul, and he was the morning show host, and he's libertarianish, and he's certainly a statist in Roger's eyes, but libertarian leaning enough. And He picked apart everything I believed, and I realized by 2007, 2008-ish, I just didn't know what I believed. I knew that I had fairly what I would come to find out were libertarian principles and beliefs, but I didn't actually have any foundational knowledge on what I believed. And so I started looking into a lot of things, and I fell in with a dangerous crowd of local Libertarian Party people, and a lot of the things that they started to say made sense. And but I couldn't get. I was 18 on. I had turned 18 on 9-9-2001, and signed up for the selective service on 9-10-2001, and then on 9/11 I crapped my pants because. And it was just such an earth-shaking event for me, and lived through that war debate. Was an adult during all of those debates. I was definitely pro-war at the time in college. I in fact held what I would call a pro-war rally. That was the goal, but I called it a support the troops rally with a lot of conservatives, and I just found that to be the hardest part. It was the foreign policy aspect that was really the hardest part for me to give up. And then when Ron Paul was in the debates in 2008, I started looking into a lot of what he believed, and that was the final piece that made me go, okay, I'm a libertarian. And I gave up my republicanism in that spring of 2008 when all of these Ron Paul delegates were kicked out of the convention and weren't allowed to go to the big convention. It was 300 at least here in Indiana. They violated their own rules. They violated their own election laws. And I just said, this seems like a system that can't be reformed. You can't reform it from the inside. And I started talking to the local Libertarian Party. They were looking for an executive director. So I went to work full time for the next 4 years as the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, working with hundreds of candidates, volunteers, fundraising. Basically, I was one of the only 2 or 3 full-time Libertarian Party employees that didn't work for National at that point. And it was a great education. It gave me a great affinity for talking to regular people in their towns about the things that they cared about and convincing them that libertarianism and the Libertarian Party were something that were worthwhile. And that's always been something I've been interested in, messaging the libertarian message to people who are not libertarians. Left there to go work as the marketing director for the Advocates for Self-Government, which are the quiz people. If you've ever taken the world's smallest political quiz, in 2013 I was the one shoveling those your way. And then now I work for a morning radio show as a digital guy. But somewhere along the way in 2012, I started We Are Libertarians, geared towards college kids because it was a podcast. But over the last 7 years that we've been doing this, it's become it's what it has become. I'm on like my 5th set of co-hosts at this point, and it's morphed so many different times in so many different ways. And where we're at right now, I think, is probably my favorite iteration of it, in that we're talking about, I think that there's a hole in the libertarian movement for people talking about libertarian policy and the conversations that regular people are having around the water cooler at work, or if you have a water cooler, the coffee pot, or what you and your friends are talking about in your group chats. I think there's a missing hole in the libertarian movement for people to talk about some issues. I think a lot of libertarian podcasts talk a lot about libertarian philosophy, or they're geared towards libertarians, or they're think tank podcast, and it's professors in ties. And so what we really have tried to do over the last 7 years is speak to people beyond the libertarian movement that are curious and about libertarian ideas, and talk about the things that they care about, like healthcare. We posted one today about Citizens United. Tomorrow's going to be about Confederate statues. We just did a full 2-hour deep dive into the New Green Deal. We tell you, if you want to know about the New Green Deal, like, we tell you everything about it. We show all of our work. And so what We Are Libertarians has become is that person who didn't have any understanding about what they believed in 2008. This has basically been the way that I have taught myself all of these things. All right, what questions and curiosities do I have? I want to answer my own questions, and then I just talk into a mic telling you what I find. And I've got about 30 to 40 other people that do the same. We've got, we've had many different contributors over the course of the years, and we got a lot of people who come on as co-host or daily host, or Brian Nichols and the Boss Hog of Liberty, and they have their own shows. So it's turned into quite a big platform over time, and it's all just an output of that curiosity of how does the world work? How do we live in a society that, how do we work together? How do we start to build a libertarian society? And what do we do with politics in 2019?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I like about you and your platform is you focus a lot on the topical cultural stuff and a lot of the things that are actually happening instead of the grand ideas that a lot of libertarians seem to focus on. And something that I think you and I both have in common is it seems like you're willing to say, I don't necessarily have all the answers. I'm kind of searching for something. I'm searching to try and figure out the right path and bringing people along in my exploration, whereas a lot of people, especially in the libertarian podcast movement, seem to be spending most of their time just educating as though they have the answers all figured out. Would you say that that's the case?
Yeah, and I don't think that's a criticism of these guys. I think somebody like Tom Woods has spent a lifetime. I respect the heck out of Tom Woods. Absolutely. And some of these other guys. They're professors. They get to spend all day thinking about this stuff and writing about it. And I think Tom Woods, for example, is an expert. And yeah. I have to be as authentic and honest with my audience as I possibly can. And the older I get, the less I seem to know. And the more that I try to learn, the less I seem to know. It's just like there's always this reminder in my brain that you don't fully understand this thread and this thread and this thread. And so it's a great intellectual adventure doing a podcast, because you're constantly trying to figure out, because you have this deadline where you're going to sit down and give a promised product to an audience. You have to, and I don't interview people, because a lot of other people interview people like Mark Claire and Johnny Rocket do a great job on Lions of Liberty and their networks of interviewing people and talking to people. Yeah. So I don't want to invade that space and do what they do, because they're doing a great job with it. And so what I try to do is talk about what's different about my show is that I try to go, what conversations do I see online, and what is the libertarian opinion on a lot of these conversations? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of libertarians are afraid to wade into things like the culture wars, or it's easy to say, the Super Bowl is bread and circuses, it means nothing to my life, or the State of the Union means nothing to my life, or the kids in the Covington kids in their MAGA hats means nothing to, and sure. a lot of that is absolutely true. There is the firmer of a grasp I have on libertarianism, because I don't the way I look at it is that I'm not I'm not giving you the definition of libertarianism. It is a philosophy that is a constant, that I am constantly matching my beliefs to this constant, and I'm learning more and more about that constant. And my beliefs are then changed the more I learn about that constant theory, and so I think if you went back and listened to the early days of the show, I say a lot of things that I don't believe now, because I've been changed by the ideas that I am constantly wrestling with.
Sure.
And the point is that I don't shy away from a fight. Yeah. I don't shy away from being controversial, because I have these principles and these values, and I apply them to every situation that's in the news. And sometimes that means that liberals or conservatives absolutely hate my guts, or they absolutely love me. And I think a lot of libertarians feel that way. And so I think libertarians have to wade into the discussion a little bit more. I think it's easier to say this is the history of this philosophical point, or we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, or let's have a discussion about the social contract. And it may feel provocative because you're talking about something that is so contrary to what society believes in, but it's not as provocative as taking a stance on the flaming issue of the day that is going to that you're going to wade into. I think, it's that stuff's hard to understand and get your head around and grapple with. And
right. And you're not going to get the layperson. You're not going to hook the layperson into libertarianism if you're talking about grand theological ideas, as opposed to, hey, #MAGA kids. Like, that's what's going to make people, start paying attention to what you're saying.
Yeah, and so I think there's a place for that, because I personally rely on that. As a libertarian of 10 years, I constantly am listening to anything Mises puts out, for instance, because I think that stuff is desperately needed in the movement, and grounding ourselves in principles and grounding ourselves in our intellectual heritage. Like, I think all that stuff's really important and really necessary. Like the Cato podcasts, like Free Thoughts is such a great podcast, for instance. Like Tom Woods is as well, But I don't think that you'd send that to a lot of your friends and go, here. Not a lot of the, like, probably 25% of the episodes, it's a lot of what I'm trying to do is more evangelism and go out to the places. I'm not edifying the faithful. What I'm doing is trying to go blaze new trails with a lot of new people, and
the soapbox libertarian.
Yeah, and try to do it in a way that is provocative and attention getting, but not inflaming.
Sure.
Because I don't think that I think I want you to feel something. No, I want you to think something. I don't want you to feel something. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Right.
Because if people are upset, then they're not thinking. They're manipulated, and I think that's why a lot of leftists and conservative justice warriors alike try to piss people off, is because it makes you easily controlled. And so I don't know. I'm trying to do something I think a little bit different, and people are starting to pay attention, I think. But I'm still working out my voice and trying to figure out how to do all this stuff, how to talk to normies,
sure,
while being principled, and it's really difficult.
Yeah. Now, where do you see where we're at in culture, where everybody's a racist, everybody's a sexist, bigot, homophobe, but pretty soon we won't be able to even use those terms because words are inflammatory and we're not allowed to say things, and definitions change. As somebody who's kind of got their finger a little bit more on the pulse of culture than many, where do you see the current state of the country?
I think there is a lot of profit in just putting out the extremes. Fox News put out Bette Midler's quote about coat hangers and abortion, and then everybody on their comment thread is all pissed off, and I think if you're a thinking person, you just go, okay, wait a minute. I thought conservatives were mad that nobody can joke anymore, but then this woman makes a joke, and then we're all mad about it. And so you have to stand with principles, and first you have to understand what you believe. That is first and foremost. To really pick apart anything, or just to master your life, you have to understand what you believe and what principles are important to you. And then you start applying it to the world around you. And libertarians, I think, can occupy a really great space if they wade in and start talking to people, because if we can avoid being tempted by the left and the right, and some of the seductions that come along with the popularity that might bring, or
outrage porn.
Outrage porn is a great way to put it. Outrage marketing. I think we're starting to see that come about. You have Prada and other high-end brands putting out blackface, turtlenecks, like, and it's just a way of market. Like outrage, as much as libertarians crap on Glenn Beck, his book "Addicted to Outrage" was brilliant. I mean, he just nails a lot of stuff. Yep. So does Ben Sass and them. And yeah, if it feels so cathartic. Like if you're just going after somebody, it just feels good. Like it's catharsis when you're engaging in that stuff. But I think if you can be the rational voice, like let's take feminism. I think if you're on the left or the right, you can have a conversation with me about women's role in society and changing sexes. And sometimes I'm going to seem fairly conservative because I'm a Christian conservative male. But then there are other times where it's just like I sound like an SJW warrior. And it's because I put equality, diversity, justice. I put these things at the forefront of what I believe. That's where I start. I start with equality. What is going to bring about equality and help everyone to thrive? And I think when you look at some of the solutions of, like, the modern feminist movement, it's steeped in a lot of cultural Marxism, and it's based around the idea of provocation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you the way that a lot of leftists, I don't mean liberals or Democrats or people who kind of come at the way that they view government from a principled point of view, but I mean the people who are like born out of Saul Alinsky and like they write for BuzzFeed or they're in Antifa. They view everything from oppressor versus oppressed. Mm-hmm. And so you, as a white man, are oppressing me because I am a woman. I'm an intersectional female. I'm a black lesbian female. And so
you heard it here first, folks.
Right.
Chris Spangle is a black lesbian female.
Right. And so you look at something like the new movement of, if you don't want to date a trans person, you're transphobic. I don't think those people really care about gay acceptance. I think they care about identifying the heretics. They want to bring up a provocative subject that inflames discussion so everybody can point out, there's the heretic. It's the same tactic. Exactly right. It's the same tactic that, that power has always used to keep society fighting one another. Right. Because war is not about actual victory. War is about uniting a society against another society and maintaining your power and bilking resources from both your population and the other. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're in a state of perpetual cultural war because there's extremes on both sides that are well funded that are kind of keeping everybody in a state of war. And then, you have people who are retreating into their conservative white male identity. And they're going, they're seeing a black female in a commercial during the Super Bowl as a provocation. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just trying to force this down my throat. Well, maybe they're trying to market to black females. I think what I think a lot of this provocation does is it has the effect that it's intended. And so if libertarians can say, listen, let's start with equality. Let's start with justice. Let's start with diversity. Let's start with these bigger principles and work towards solutions. Everybody kind of agrees that there's a problem. Like, for instance, with cop shooting, minority populations. Like, you and I as white males, when we get in a car, I don't know about you, but I never get in a car and really think about, if I get pulled over for a taillight, I might get shot today. Right. It just doesn't enter my mind. If I'm in my workplace and I'm bending over, I don't think about a man checking my ass out. I just think that there are life experiences. I do, but I have a better ass than you, so. I have no ass. I have the Spangle ass, which is horrible. But my favorite pair of pants is Jennifer Lopez brand, so, that's not even a joke. Wow. And you're vaping. The evidence is really starting to pile up. I bought them at Goodwill, so just to. So to kind of tie all this together, I just think that, there are people who are craving an anti-hysterical, rational way of thinking about societal problems. And in a free society, we have to be the ones that are answering, here's the solutions, here's how we work together, here's how we cooperate. And I think the libertarian movement has kind of descended into a little bit of an NPC mode, and Facebook groups and memes have stunted a lot of libertarians intellectually, and they're not leading, they're just reacting. What do you mean by stunted? Do you mean just because they are in these echo chambers where they have built that their voices are like it's filling a water balloon of libertarian ideas, and it's like then they get out into the real world and it just kind of spills out all over everything, and nobody, they don't know how to interact with the mainstream. Yeah, right. No, absolutely. I think it is. I think that is not just libertarians. I think that's a societal issue right now. I think people have. Yeah, people, if you read Them by Ben Sass, which was, he's not a libertarian. It's like, yeah, but his book is really well written about loneliness and about the changing nature of work and the media. And here's all of these societal issues. Here's why we feel miserable when everything's actually really good. And a lot of it comes back to us living in echo chambers. We build back porches instead of front porches. We don't talk to each other. We've atrophied those muscles that make community building skills necessary. And if libertarians want a free society, we're going to have better manners. We're going to have to learn to communicate with our neighbors better and build coalitions and accept the fact that other people believe things that aren't necessarily the same as what we might believe, or have some patience that people might change, or accept the fact that maybe people who are different than us have had different life experiences. We may see the same problem. We may see, I think if you're a black man, you see the issue with police officers one way, and I see the issue with police officers as a different way. Like they may see it as a matter of this, my skin color plays into this, and I look at it as a matter of government force and power.
Sure.
So how do we converse this through to come to a solution that really works for everybody? And I wrote an article on We Are Libertarians about Bill Weld that the response to it proved my point in two ways. And basically what I said is there is a process for new libertarians. People have an interest in the party or in the movement. They kind of dip their toe in, or they get involved. They immediately get rushed into leadership. They immediately get rushed into running for office. They start saying things that are fundamentally unlibertarian because they're new to it. It's like going to work on your first day. You're not an expert at what your job is.
Right.
And then they just get absolutely torn to shreds by the packs of wolves in this party. And then they leave, and then we go, I don't know why we're not growing. And I think Bill Weld just typifies that cycle so well. You see if you...
so you love Bill Weld. That's what you're saying, right?
That's exactly right. Right. Like I wrote this article saying our culture has to change, and it was, I got called a statist, I got called a dickhead, I got called a Weld lover, I got called a Weld supporter. Like I saw Bill Weld speak in Indiana. I posted the speech online so as many people could hear it as they wanted. And what I was pissed off like everybody else in 2016 about him vouching for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And when he gave further context to what he said about like the Hillary thing, he goes, all I was trying to do in the context of that question was say that Hillary Clinton is a legitimate presidential candidate. I wasn't saying that I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton or that anyone else should. Well, this game of telephone that's happened over the last couple of years is that Bill Weld voted for Hillary Clinton and betrayed the Libertarian Party party and movement itself.
Well, he did say that she was possibly the most qualified candidate, right?
I mean, in 2016, in the context of that race between Gary Johnson, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton, is she not the most qualified of those three people?
Oh, that's a different conversation. But
right. I mean, when you talk about
the bar was set pretty low.
Right. But when you're talking about experience for handling the job,
sure,
she was the most qualified. Like,
sure.
And then his gun comments, he said, listen, this was 3 years after the fact. He goes, when I said that stuff, I was ignorant. And now I've talked to people like Adam Kokesh. I've talked to other people. I've learned a lot. But nobody gives a shit that Bill Weld learned a lot. Like, they only give a shit about the thing that they were mad about 3 years ago. They
right.
never actually went back and listened to the guy. And
there's no such thing as personal growth in politics. If you change your mind, you're a flip-flopper or you're disingenuous because you believed something else a long time ago.
Like, but do we want to be those people? Like, are we building something better here, or are we just
right.
going, well, people are irrational and stupid, including our people, and so fuck it.
Right.
And so, like, in that same speech, I listened to Bill Weld and I said, I'll never support this guy. Like, I don't want Ron Nielsen 3.0. Who was Gary's campaign manager twice and did a poor job. He did a poor job on Gary's New Mexico race. He's just not a good campaign manager, and he was managing Weld, and I felt that Weld didn't fully understand yet the broad case of libertarianism. He still thought about it in terms of issues. Like when you're a new libertarian, you think, if I agree with this set of issues
right.
and don't agree with these sets of issues, I'm a libertarian. But when you're further down the line, you go, no, it's about a whole philosophy change. It's a full change of beliefs. And so what I'm finding with the libertarian movement is that people are not appreciating the process that they went through, the process that I outlined at the beginning, where when I was hired by the Libertarian Party of Indiana, I was for gun control. Mm-hmm. And now I want you to have a recreational McNuke. Like I just, because over the course of 10 years through a process, I changed my mind and I became a different person. But
you have to start somewhere.
Right.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because You know, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay.
And so I'll ask you, like, in your like, how does that process of changing somebody's heart and mind? Because if you and I are talking and I say, I need you to change your entire belief system and worldview today,
right,
or else I'm going to be your enemy, that's not going to work as well as the process that you and I have gone through. And what was that process for you?
That process for me to transition into libertarianism?
Yeah. Like, how did it happen?
I've said several times on the show that Donald Trump is the reason why I'm a libertarian. I haven't been a libertarian for more than 5-6 years or so because I didn't know what it was at all. I didn't care about politics at all before Donald Trump, and just started watching to see what the hell was going on over here. And I was raised just Republican, and just that's just what you are, because that's what we are. And started digging a little bit into politics and started watching all the debates, and I wanted to find out all the information, so I started watching the libertarian debates and just the stuff that they were saying. I latched onto that, and then got into things like Jason Stapleton, who is a statist according to Roger Paxton, and Mark Claire, and all you guys, and came over that way. So it was definitely, the people who made it fun and made it relatable, made it real, not the people who were saying this is this because, this is the way things have to be. The people who are real and humble about it are the people that got me into it and are going to get people into it, in my opinion.
The way that you communicate anything and the way that you communicate libertarianism is by starting from a place of authenticity.
Right.
And it comes about by friends sharpening each other. I think in my case, it was personal interaction with people, talking these things through patiently. Mm-hmm. In your case, it was listening to conversations happen.
Right.
But the conversations are what change things. It's not the preaching. It is not in some cases it may be the reading, but I find the people who have had their minds changed through conversation and have become libertarians because of conversation get this inherently, whereas the people who were alone in their room reading Rothbard and were challenged by their ideas, those are the people who don't quite get how to message libertarianism. And so they just think that everybody should do it the way that they did it.
Right.
And they have no patience for the people who might think in a different way than they think. And so I don't know. I get the argument that somebody like a Bill Weld, I wouldn't have supported him for the same reasons that most people wouldn't have supported him. He didn't quite get the philosophy. He didn't quite represent us. But I think that Bill Weld still had something to offer the libertarian movement. He was elected governor. He was very well tied into the Washington establishment and the swamp creatures.
Right.
And he had been elected to major offices. Like, here's a guy who has a long experience in the law and politics, and it's a party full of people who've never run for anything and have no experience. And you'd think that we'd all sit back and go, we have a lot to teach him, and he has a lot to teach us. So let's converse with the guy. Let's have him on our podcasts.
Yeah, don't elect him right out the bat and let him lead the party, but don't stab him in the back just because he doesn't know everything either.
Right. Or afterwards going, you know what, it wasn't right that we had him there, but the guy's trying. The guy is showing up on his dime. He's calling people like Laura Ebke after she loses and saying, how do I raise money for you? He raised money for candidates here in Indiana. He was doing politics.
Sure.
And instead of looking at those social cues and saying, this is someone who supports what we do, let's attack him, and let's, why did none of us have? Now, I tried to interview him here in Indiana, and he was like, I just can't today. It didn't work out, and I never actually talked to him directly. But do you think I really wanted to talk to Bill Weld and have him on my show? Like, what as a fellow podcaster, if you, Mark Claire, me, Johnny, Jason Stapleton, what do you think the response would have been had we had Bill Weld on our show to have a conversation with where he stood? What would the response be?
It would have been the libertarian response. The same I mean, the little bit that you've said about Bill Weld that people lashed out at you for, it would have been that times 1,000. So
yeah, on my wall when I wrote this article, which was not about supporting Bill Weld, it was about saying let's be better, let's create a better culture. Mm-hmm. People totally missed it, and I had this conversation with this one guy. And he kept repeating the things about Bill Weld that just weren't true, mm-hmm. but he had seen in his echo chamber forever. And I said, well, here's why I think differently than you, because I listened to this speech that he gave, and he was directly questioned about guns. He was directly questioned about this. And I just see it differently because I have new information.
Fucking
and he
statist.
Right. And he goes, well, now he's saying something different. I go,
so he learned.
I go, so he got new information and he changed his mind.
Right.
Like, listen to the thing. And then, like, if after listening to this speech, which you can listen to on the podcast Raw Audio Politics, which is under our umbrella, you can listen to the speech that I'm referencing. If after listening to it and consuming the same exact facts that I have consumed, we come to a different conclusion, then okay. But if you're going to have a 15-message tit for tat about how you're just not going to listen to this and you just think I'm wrong and I'm indoctrinated, then you're unwilling to learn anything or have new information put into your head, you're being an NPC.
Right.
You're being intellectually backwards. Like I am. It grieves me what has happened in the libertarian movement over the last couple of years, especially since Trump was elected, because it wasn't this way when I started. Because when the movement was smaller, it was full of people like the Mary Ruarts, the Lee Wrights, the people who, in 2008, the party was fairly small. Nobody knew the word libertarian. Mm-hmm. And so you had a lot of people who really understood the philosophy. They were in leadership. And now when I think when you look at the leadership, it's a lot of people like, I think Joshua Smith has done some good things, but I also think Joshua Smith is a demagogue. And I think that Joshua Smith cares about building a coalition for Joshua Smith. And he doesn't really care about talking to anybody that might disagree with him or think that some of his tactics are bad. He's the one who called me a dickhead.
Sure.
Now, I was being a dickhead. I mean, I'm not going to deny it, but I was being a dickhead for a point. It's not because I have a personal problem with Joshua Smith. It's that I think he's introducing a strain of thinking. This has been some of my issue with the Mises Caucus. I think that I have forever wanted the Libertarian Party and the Mises group to like heal that divide. Like whatever has gone on between Cato and the Koch brothers and the Libertarian Party and Ed Crane and Murray Rothbard and Mises and all these guys, like, get the fuck over it. It's been 40 years. Like, let's move on. We're too small of a movement to have this division over some stock that got stolen from Murray Rothbard.
Yeah.
Like, let's move on. There's no reason for Nick Sarwark and Tom Woods to hate each other. Like, if they actually, I have had long conversations with Nick. I really like Tom, and I'm sure if we had a conversation, we'd love each other too. Like, I think if those guys sat down and talked to each other, they'd get along, but they won't, because it's like they don't get along, and I just don't get it. Like, and so it's this long history of tit for tat back and forth that has caused this split. And so my point on the Mises Caucus is I've wanted the Mises Caucus for a long time. Joshua Smith and Michael Heiss have done a great job of bringing new people into the movement. But being in a movement doesn't mean holding everyone hostage through tantrums.
Right.
Being in a movement means that you are willing to talk to the other members and other coalitions and other factors of the movement, learn where they stand, and then work together to have all these coalitions achieve a common goal. And I think the problem with a lot of what's going on right now is that we've got coalitions in the movement that are not willing to listen to anyone else. they're jihadists. And I know this is going to be completely taken out of context, and you'll see what will happen to me is exactly what I'm talking about. People will not listen to the context
Sure.
of my words. They will just say, Spangle thinks the Mises caucus are jihadists. And like, that's not what I'm, it's that, and I've said this directly to Michael and Joshua both. Like, the 1,000 people that vote at the Libertarian Party convention have spent 40 years building the Libertarian Party. People like myself have done it for 10. I lost a marriage because of the Libertarian Party and my dedication to it. I'll be goddamned if I'm going to let some people who don't understand politics and don't understand how to actually work with others be in charge of the movement. Now, if you learn those skills, your philosophy and mine lines up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But your substance is great. It's your style that needs work.
Sure. Do you remember, I mean, Ron Paul, his whole thing was the revolution, then had the love switched backwards. That caught everybody's attention. It's like, that is something that seems like the direction that we should be going. Like, let's be more inclusive and more open-minded to discuss these things instead of just, well, we disagree. It's basically the same thing as like churches and different denominations of churches, because you've got this church that believes that the rapture is going to happen. This church believes that it's pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, and it divides. People are angry and hating each other just based on really minuscule differences of opinion. And it's like, that doesn't actually change. Like, we could actually commune together and be together and be working in the same direction, even if we disagree on these minutia details that is dividing us and making us, just flounder around.
That's really like I totally agree with you. Like, the Presbyterians and the Baptists believe the same thing except infant baptism. So we need to have multiple.
Right.
It's crazy.
And so we have two churches that have 5 people instead of one church that has 10. Great.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I think in the long span of my career, that has always been one of my goals, is to unite all the different clans of libertarianism, because I'm a person who is free and open to talk to anybody that I'd like, and I try to understand where other people are coming from and understand that other people have different experiences. And so I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and so I think not just libertarians, but people at large have a lot of the same goals. They have the same desires. They have the same dreams for their family. Like, everybody just wants to focus on the 100 people that are going to come to their funeral.
Right.
The 100 people that they see in their daily life. They want those people to be happy and healthy. They want to be happy and healthy, and they want everyone else to leave them alone. There's no reason why you and I should give a fuck about Venezuela or Vladimir Putin or even some guy in Washington, D.C. Like, you should only care about the 100 people that are around you. And most people, when they hear that message, they go, I totally agree. And I think that when you attack a Bill Weld, when you take him out of context, you attack a Gary Johnson, you attack a Bob Barr before him, like, yes, you should hold leadership accountable, but you also have to keep in mind, and I believe this is true for Donald Trump and AOC as well, you have to understand that those people bring a lot of new people into a movement or into politics in general. And so an audience, having worked with audiences for 15 years now, audiences don't hear you criticizing Donald Trump or AOC or Bill Weld. They hear you criticizing them.
Sure.
And so when you are going too hard on the memes about how AOC is dumb, you are losing a Facebook friend that is liberal-leaning who in 5 years might want to talk to you about libertarianism.
Sure.
When you are being too critical of Donald Trump or too critical of Bill Weld, you're losing the people who were brought into the movement by those particular people. They're taking it personally, and then they don't engage with you. And so I love memes. I share memes all day long. I have for 10 years now. It's been a big reason that We Are Libertarians has grown. But I think, in talking to like my social media director, I've said, lay off the AOC is stupid stuff. Or, there's provocation for reasons. There's got to be some intention behind it. And
Sure.
So, I think like our jihadist nature of kneel to the sword or else it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. It just creates enemies.
It just adds to the outrage porn. So
And I'm not. I like Michael Heiss and not as much Joshua Smith, but like I really like Michael Heiss, for instance. I think he's done a great job in organizing this brand new caucus. And I think he could play an important role as the leader of that movement in saying to his people, let's start to listen and understand, because those 1,000 delegates are the ones who are going to vote for us. Because I can tell you, having a lot of longtime contacts in the LP, they're really open to the Mises Caucus being engaging and being a part of it. The Libertarian Party wants nothing more than new people involved in it. But those people have given a lot to the party. You know, the Daniel, what was the guy with the convention who allegedly didn't invite Ron Paul to speak, even though it wasn't true.
Right.
You know, my former boss, Sam Goldstein, got in the middle. You know, he was tagged with it, even though it wasn't true. And I called Sam and I just said, I worked for you. I've known you. You've been involved for 25, 30 years. Like, I don't believe that I'm hearing that you told Ron Paul he couldn't come speak. And he goes, that's so untrue. It's insane what is actually going on. He goes, here's the 5 reasons why we said what we said. We couldn't do this. It was a hotel thing, you know. And so nobody believes Sam, even though Sam has given so much to this party and to this movement. Mm-hmm. It's just that the memes and the Facebook groups say that he's a liar and he's not telling the truth. And so you've just created an enemy in Sam Goldstein who influences 5 other votes. And so when your chair candidate goes to run in 2020, he's going to tell, they're all assholes.
Sure.
So like you're actually hurting your cause when you actually don't start to engage people like Nick Sarwark, for instance. Yeah. Is a great example. Like, that guy is really smart and has something to say. I don't agree with him a lot. I think he and I have had our tussles. But anyways, so that's where I'm coming from. I just think if I can go on other libertarian podcasts and say, can't we all get along? Can't we all work together? You know, criticize where it's fair.
Sure.
You know, I think it's fit. My criticism of Michael and Joshua are fair, mm-hmm. but not unfair. You know, these are the enemies of blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what you're doing when you criticize somebody in an unfair way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are getting a little bit libertarian insider baseball for this show, but that's totally fine. I feel like a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of what you're saying is exactly what I say on this show all the time, which is just, you know, we're all humans trying to figure this out together. The person that you're spatting with online is not the enemy. They are a person who was born in a different area, was raised in a different place, was given different information throughout their lives and came to different conclusions. Why the hell can't we just sit down and discuss and listen to other people's points of opinion? Like, I have people on the show all the time that I certainly disagree with, and I don't bring them on to try and change their mind. I bring them on to try and see why they come to the conclusions that they have. Like, I've had on an occultist witch. I've had on like people in just all different sorts of areas in life, because my goal is to just, you know, I feel like if there's a point to humanity, it's to try and, you know, figure out what this is together. And I certainly can't say that I have it all figured out. And I feel like there's a extreme lack of humility in the world. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you're talking about in the social media, people glossing their lives up and attacking people for no reason at all, because we have
vanity.
Yeah, it's a vanity and pride thing, and we have to look the best, and not only that, but we have to break the other person down to make us feel better. I mean, there's a part of me that wonders if this isn't orchestrated by somebody. Do you think that there is anything more behind it, or do you think it's just a result of the social media aspect?
I think a little bit of both. So if you understand anything about the Frankfurt School, there's a book called The Devil's Pleasure Palace that writes a lot about this. It's a little flowery, but it kind of gets to the meat of it. But if you look up the Frankfurt School and you understand cultural Marxism and critical theory was, and all of this was basically begun from a group of French and German Marxists who were professors. And they said, listen, we know economic Marxism can't work. Look at the Soviet Union. You know, look at us having to flee Germany to come to America, flee France in '68 to come to America. We know that it won't work. But if we start reinterpreting classic works and, that's what critical theory is basically studying the culture and critiquing it from a Marxist point of view, then we have a better shot of tilting the society more Marxist. And then at the end of that road, we can then bring about the Green New Deal, which is Marxism. Like, if you understand, I think if you go and listen to our Green New Deal episode, you hear me talk about what's going on in education and the manipulation that's taking place and the fear that is being instilled in children. And then you hear, I chose that sequence for a reason, because the manipulation comes first, the fear comes first, and then we have the solution for you.
Right.
And the solution is more government, it's force, it's the monopolization of industries and everything under the government banner. It's basically Atlas Shrugged. And so what these guys did is, they started teaching at Columbia and the Ivy League schools and reinterpreting, Jane Austen, and out of it was born the feminist movement, the modern feminist movement, not the equality movement of women's suffrage of the 1920s, but the modern feminist movement. Basically any movement that views everything through the lens of oppressor versus oppressed. That is a culture that has its roots in cultural Marxism.
Right.
And so it's all about provocation. If you read The Devil's Pleasure Palace and Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, you really understand exactly what's going on with a lot of the people at the tops of these food chains, the people who run these advocacy groups, the people who are the ones elevating on BuzzFeed a tweet that then creates this provocative conversation in society, and it really is designed by a very few amount of people. And a friend just recently asked me, like, why are so many smart people so evil after she watched the Ted Bundy thing? And I think it's because so many people are so easily manipulated.
Yeah.
It's because so many people are not intelligent.
Right.
I think there's very few people who have kind of that devious intelligence. Most of us are just busy with our lives. We're ignorant of what's going on. It's like the people who brag about not watching the State of the Union. I go, why? So you can be easily manipulated like the rest of the 330 million people that didn't watch it? Like, congratulations on showing off how easily manipulated you can be. Like, you don't want more information. So I think there is some design.
They also brag about how much joy they took from watching the Super Bowl at the same time. So right.
And so yeah, there is a certain method to the madness, and I think once you understand that principle, you start to see it. Where it's like, are you going to date a trans person? Well, that's an irrelevant thing in our lives. Like, how many people actually ever meet a trans person, let alone have the conundrum in their daily life that, or how
just
many
tripping
people
over dicks out here?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how many people are ever faced with the situation where they set up bathrooms and a trans person has to use one? Like,
right.
I just start to go, the things that we're discussing are nonsense. Like, the things that we're mad about are nonsense. And so there's a little bit of a confluence of events. You have the proliferation of cultural Marxism throughout the colleges, universities, high schools. You have that flooding into Hollywood, and it's have the highest social proof people in our society have this ideology as well. And then you have, growing economic inequality, you have wage stagnation, you have inflation, as we all know, the growth of the state, which in and of itself, like, if you and I are on different sides of an issue and there's a gun in between us, and if you get that gun, you're going to put it to my head, and I have to live the way that you want. I have to be your slave. You better be damn right I'm going to fight you for that gun.
Right,
and so it's that same mentality. And so there's so many different, and the rise of social media, I think, plays into it, because it's so unhealthy for the human brain. Like I think Bumble is one of the most destructive things possible for people. Like, I think if you get off of Bumble, you realize how much happier you are in a matter of days, because your brain is still prehistoric and not hardwired to be rejected 150 times an hour. Like, you just are doing things at such a rate where your brain is concerned. It's able to handle 100 people, and you're forcing it to handle 8,000 people.
Right.
And their concerns. And I think we're just all literally being we're in a panopticon where everything you do is now on video. I just think we're being driven mad by modern society.
Yeah.
And there are some parts about Marxism and capitalism that are kind of, you look at the Marxist critique and you go, yeah, but what they got wrong is that it is the force that is making us unhappy with government. So yeah, I do think that it's kind of intentional.
Okay. Gotcha. So I feel like it's kind of sad, but I feel like I've asked this question a lot lately. Where do you see this going? Do you see there being a turnaround of any kind? Are you optimistic, or do you see it all just burning down and starting over? Do you think it's going to come to a head at some point, or what?
I don't see a civil war coming. I don't think I think slavery was a great evil. That was a profound evil that was just clearly wrong. And, there are problems in our society, but there's not that profound evil. I think the most profound evil in our society, if you were to say what's the most evil thing in our society, war, I think would be number one, and perpetual warfare by the United States government, or abortion, as a pro-life person. And both of those two things could be easily disputed by a bunch of other people.
Sure.
And for very reasonable reasons. I think if we were to discuss abortion and you were pro-choice and I was pro-life, I think we both would look at it and go, I see where you're coming from. And so I don't think we have that very clear evil in our society. I think we're arguing over nonsense. We're literally about to start a civil war over some kids in a hat. It's bullshit.
We're pretending like these things are black and white, but
they matter.
Yeah, that they matter at all. Right.
Right. And so I think there's a big movement of people that you just don't. If you're out there in listener land and you're not watching these cultural trends like I watch, I think there's reason to be hopeful that there are a lot of people starting to wake up and go, we got to get a hold of ourselves. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
There is an anti-hysteria and rational, centrist point of view, of which I think libertarians can participate. That is, I think we're the ultimate centrists in this modern society when we say, listen, most people just want to get on with their lives and they don't want to be hassled. And here's how you don't get hassled. And we can play a big role in tilting the balance, because I think we are getting to the point. I think this next election's probably going to go Democratic. This next president after Donald Trump will be a Democrat, be it 2020 or 2024. And they're going to take it so far left that I think for 2 generations, people are going to go, this is insane. We've got to stop this growth of government. I think the Generation Z is super conservative.
Do you think it's going to be have it your way? Let's see how this goes, and it's going to just be a disaster?
Yeah, and I think within the next 20 years, I think this growing movement of people like you and I who are going, no, I'm not playing this game. Let's listen to each other.
Yeah.
That militant middle, as my friend Joe Hauptman calls it.
I like that.
I think is really starting to grow and is going to take off. There's, like I was just on Frank Caliendo from ESPN and Al Jackson, who's on Daily Blast Live. They have a podcast. They had me on for 2 episodes to explain what the hell a libertarian is to them. And the foundation of these 2 cultural figures, these comedians, is to understand different points of view from different people. And so, when people who have no reason, and in fact it's harmful to start having political conversations, it's risky for those guys, are willing to say, we're going to have these tough conversations, but from a place of respect, and we're going to treat each other with dignity, you go, okay, people are starting to put their butts on the line for this.
Sure.
So I think I know so many people read my stuff and they never comment. It's only the negative inflamers that comment. But I get so many direct messages from people and going, I could never comment because I don't want people. But man, you were so right on. Just like, yeah, I think there's a huge, dude. There's a whole hunger. There's a whole hunger for people to stand up and be bold right now. Right. Be courageous.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that even the extreme people like Owen Benjamin, who's going out there and just saying whatever the hell he thinks, even if I disagree with him on things, just these people who have a name being bold enough to say, I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to just say what I think because I'm not going to take a knee to this. I think that is what is going to, if there is any hope for this turning around, I think that's going to be what it is, because there can only be we can only push this so far. We can only take away so many words. We can only get outraged so many times before people start saying, "Let's bring all the words back. Who cares? I'm done with this. My head hurts, and I don't want to be mad anymore."
Yeah, we're there.
You think so?
I think so. I think the Tommy Laurens of the world are done.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to go back to the Glenn Becks of the world, Beck has socialists on. Like he's having those conversations. So I think once Trump goes, it'll probably get a little worse because the pendulum will swing back.
Sure.
And then everybody's just going to go, all right, enough. And that's why libertarians have to get their house in order.
Yeah.
I don't want to criticize other libertarians at all. I don't like it.
Got 12 years. Figure your shit out.
Right. I don't want to do it, but I feel like we are in a time of preparation because the country is going to look at us and say, we're ready for you to lead. And if we're not ready to lead, then we miss our shot. And
we're still fighting over the minutia.
Right.
We're just over in the corner like, oh, wait, you're ready for us? Shit, dang it.
Right. We have no answers. And so that's what I try to do with We Are Libertarians is what is the answer for all of these different issues? And how do we handle these things? How do we structure society from an interpersonal level? I'm not into economics. I'm more into sociology, history, religion. I definitely look at it from more of a liberal arts point of view than a lot of other libertarians who look at it from an economic point of view.
Sure.
And so that's why I think I stick out like a sore thumb sometimes.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I love it. I love all of it. Do you have any final thoughts before we get some plugs in here, man?
I would say, if I were to encourage you to do something, study the life of Martin Luther King. If you want a commitment, Taylor Branch wrote a 3-part series on Martin Luther King. Or if you're a documentary person, The Eyes on the Prize is great. You can find it on YouTube. Or there's a shortened Taylor Branch. Like, go and study the life of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement and how that movement was formed and how they dealt with problems and how they dealt with people who, and how it changed over time. And I just think, centering a movement around nonviolence, love has to be at the forefront of it. And there was nobody who was more effective in moving the culture and the government to a place of more freedom for people in our lifetimes or in our recent history than Martin Luther King. And he needs to be the template for libertarians. So I'd greatly encourage people to go study his life. Definitely one of my personal heroes. What courage, what strength of character, but what a fallible human being that was at the same time. So definitely do that. And then you can follow me on anything. Follow We Are Libertarians on anything. We're like on every platform imaginable. Go listen to our podcast first and foremost. Go check out our website. So love to have you join us.
Absolutely. I would encourage the same. And Chris, it's been a pleasure. Glad we could finally meet in person for real-ish as far as technology goes. It's been good having you, and you're always welcome here, man.
Thank you. Anytime.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chris Spangle as much as I did. And I did. I really, really did. We got a little bit into the libertarian weeds more than we normally do on this show. I am a libertarian, as you know, but I try to keep things fully digestible for all audiences, because this is not just a strictly political show. So talking about some of the insider baseball of libertarianism might be boring to some of you, but I enjoy it, and I know that a lot of you are libertarians as well. So good stuff there. Really enjoyed that conversation. And we talked for, I think, almost an extended hour bonus episode that is available to members of the Downers Club, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. If you would like to join the Downers Club and get that, you can do so at patreon.com/The System Is Down. Sign up for as little as a cup of coffee a month. And I of course, I wanted to get Chris's thoughts on, conspiracies, some of the weirder things, the things that he doesn't typically talk about on his show, because, we're here to just be humans together. And I like to find out what different people think about different avenues of thought. Chris isn't a conspiracy-minded individual per se, but he has a lot of good insight on the topics. So I wanted to, just pick his brain a little bit, and it was a lot of fun because he's a really cool guy. He was a lot of fun to talk to. Anyway, again, patreon.com/The System Is Down. We do a bunch of bonus episodes of the show. We do all kinds of things. We do movie reviews. I do a game show called Would You Rather Wednesday that is horribly offensive with Remzo Martinez of the Remzo Martinez Experience. We do the League of Liberty that I do with Brian McWilliams and some guys from the Lions of Liberty group and Remzo. And we do extended episodes of the Anti-News, which is the second show on this main channel here, called The After Party, where Craig and I break down things in the news. So go check that out. Also, I'll talk a little bit more about the Anti-News because I brought it up. The Anti-News' name was mentioned in the last statement, so I will give you 30 seconds to talk about the Anti-News. Sorry, I'm just getting geared up for some nice debates that are soon to come. I very much look forward to them. I enjoy some of the nerd sports and the politics way more than is probably healthy. But you can guarantee that Anti-News will be covering all of the political stuff as it comes up in the year to come. But Anti-News is the second show on this stream. It is where Craig and we basically pull up news articles, let you know what's happening in the world, and we do so in a very dark comedic fashion. We basically watch the world burn and make fun of it while it goes down. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We don't take anything too seriously, if that hasn't been made painfully aware. But I know that for me personally, if I was looking for a way to find out what's going on in the world, that would be the way to do it, because I don't care that much. But if somebody can present it and keep me a little bit informed as to what people are talking about and do so in a way that is my style of dark humor, I'd be all for it. So that's kind of my goal with this show in every aspect, is to make it something that I would listen to if I wasn't the one making it. So hopefully you feel the same way. Hopefully we continue to cultivate a big group of weirdos that have the same strange dark humor as I have. So you can, of course, find all the information about Anti-News over at antinewslive.com. Also, if you would like to be a part of the community that we are creating here, we have a forum that is for you, for everybody who is interested in having these conversations about uncomfortable, out-of-bounds topics and doing so in a civil manner. You can find it on Facebook. Just type in The System Is Down Forum, ask to join, and I'll get you in there right away. It's a good time. It's a good place to be. A lot of our friends of the show, a lot of the guests that I have on the show are in there. I'm in there, obviously. So come, chat with me, chat with all of us, and let's build something beautiful together. Now, next week is our big 100th episode of the show. Yes, technically it's probably like our 600th episode of the show if you include all the bonus episodes, all the episodes of Anti-News. But for this main show here, it is the official 100th episode of the show. So I've got some things very special planned. I've got some big announcements and some new things in the works. I'm planning on making this thing even cooler. That's all I'm going to say about it right now. So tune in next week for sure to find out all about what I have in store, because I think you're going to enjoy it. Maybe you won't. I'm sure there will be some people outraged, because you can't do anything in today's day and age without somebody being outraged. But check that out next week, and subscribe to the show on iTunes. Do all the things that millennials do. Like, share, subscribe. We're on all the platforms. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We're, of course, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Minds, Gab, YouTube, obviously. All the things. Go find us. Go share us. Go like, subscribe, hit notification bells. Do all those worthless things that we love to do, and help get the name out there about the show. I appreciate that very much whenever you do, and it costs you absolutely nothing. It barely even costs you any time at all. Just post a thing. Say, hey, check out this show. That's it. That's it. Don't be lazy. Don't be a lazy son of a bitch. Go share the show with a friend this week, and I will love you forever. I promise. I really do. And of course, go out and have a conversation with somebody this week, as I always say. I feel like it's pretty well fitting to throw this in here, as I usually do, as it ended up kind of being the main topic of this conversation that I had with Chris. Listen to other people. Don't be a piece of shit. Listen to people. Hear their opinions. Hear why they think the way they do. Be humble enough to be open-minded to why they came to the conclusions that they did. Know what you believe, but, listen to them. They're not your enemy. They are not your enemy. And they could be your ally if you were only willing to be the difference in this culture war that we find ourselves in. You could be the person that changes their mind. You see them as an enemy, they see you as an enemy. What if instead you said, I see what you're saying, what about this? Humbly approach them and show them the error of their mindset if you think that you are right. Maybe we'll have somebody else who can join the System is Down forum and be civil and not shout and call names, and maybe they'll even understand our insider baseball conversations about libertarianism if you only approach them in a humble manner and understand why they come to the conclusions that they do. So that would be my challenge to you today. Keep the conversations going. Stay uncomfortable. Stay in this mindset of, open dialogue. Nothing should be off the table. There should not be any area of thought that is not able to be discussed. So let's do it. Let's continue to change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. Now, I think that's it. I think that's enough rambling for the end of this. Please join me next Monday morning for the big celebration of 100 episodes of The System is Down. I think you're going to really enjoy it. It'll be like a nice party, a nice celebration. You'll find out some new things. You'll see some new things that you can't unsee. And you'll... it's just going to be a fun, chill, laid-back time. So, next Monday, 100 episodes. Thank you guys so much for being here. I love you more than anything, and I appreciate your patronage and even just your free listenership. Go out, tell people about it. Let's build this thing into something beautiful and awesome that changes hearts and minds for the better. And, I think that's enough soapboxing for today. So, if you'll have me, of course, I will be back here first thing next Monday morning with some more uncomfortable conversations for your stupid little ears. Until then, please continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.